Our next storyteller is Antonio Sacre. Do you know the first time Antonio was at this festival, it was at the Exchange Place. The Exchange Place is at 5:30 today. Hey, I got that announcement in really well, didn't I, Corrine? 5:30 today over at the College Street tent. People who've never told at this festival, but have been out and around telling stories all over the place. So that is really fun. You'll find 6 tellers, each doing 10 minutes. The first time Antonio Sacre was at this festival, it was at the Exchange Place. People loved him so much, they invited him to be a new voice. And then they loved him so much, they invited him to come back many times to be a featured teller. Antonio has, over the years, started writing books. He has been Fringe Festival's best of the New York Fringe Festival 2 years running. He has been on HBO. This guy knows how to make a living with storytelling because you got to be diverse. His newest book is called My Name is Cool. Stories from a Cuban, Irish, American storytellers. His first chapter book, which follows up 3 picture books. Is that right, Antonio? Well, we're going to hear a little about his own dad, and again tomorrow a little about his dad. But Antonio has experience as a dad as well. He is the assistant coach to his son's soccer team. And if you go on YouTube, you can see him sending his daughter off on her first 2-wheeler without training wheels. He was so encouraging to her. He said, "Be brave, sweetie, be brave." And she looked up at him and said, "Let go, Daddy." So I'm going to let go so you could enjoy the ride with Antonio Sacre.
Beth Horner makes it look easy. If you don't know, she is one of my early storytelling teachers and one of the best storytellers we have. Beth Horner, our MC today. How many of you are lucky enough to call your dad today? How many of you are lucky enough to talk to your dad most days? How many of you get a message from your dad every single morning at 7 a.m. East Coast time, which is 4 a.m. Los Angeles time? And I felt like I met Barbara McBride Smith's dad today. If we are not lucky enough to talk to them, we can talk about them, and we get to meet them. And I learned that here 20 years ago, and I'm thrilled to be here now. Kids in the hospital, hey, what's happening? It sucks that you're in the hospital today, but you're watching storytelling, and hopefully we can make you, for a second, remember that there are things that we can laugh about. And then if you are not interested in me because you're in the hospital and it's hard to be in the hospital, you can look at our signer over here and watch her. She is one of my favorites, and I've been performing with her for years as well. Who's been on a car trip with your dad? Who's been on a long bus ride or train ride or plane ride with your dad? My mom's family comes from Ireland. They settled in Boston. My mom was born in Boston. That's where I was born. My father's family comes from Cuba. They came from Cuba and they settled in Miami. My whole family in Miami was evacuated from Miami, and they are now in farther away from the shore. I'm thinking about them now with the hurricane and listening to this rain. My father would put us in the car and drive us from Delaware to Miami. Does anyone know how far that is? It's a long way. When we would go with my mom to Boston, it was 6 hours to Boston in the car. That was a long way, but it was the 1970s, so we weren't constrained by seatbelts, and we didn't know that if you had 6 cans of Coke and 16 bags of cookies that it would make you crazy. So we would just eat all that stuff in the car, and we would drive north to Boston. The way my mom drove was she just drove holding onto the wheel and drove straight until we got lost, and she'd go the other direction and got straight, and then we would somehow end up in Boston. My dad would drive straight. Now, if you drive straight south from Delaware to Miami, you'll get there. It is 95 south, straight down to Miami. I think I was 9 or 10 years old. I have 2 brothers who are twins born on my very first birthday. My mom said I had 3 boys in 1 year. I am a candidate for sainthood. My dad says 3 boys in 1 year, that's the man that I am, you know. And sometimes we would go as a family to Boston, sometimes we would go as a family to Miami, but one day it was just my dad taking my 2 brothers and I to Miami. We get on 95 South, 2 miles from our house in Delaware, and we know we're gonna be on it a long way. My dad said, we're gonna be in the car a long way. He turned on smooth jazz radio. We had to listen to that for 19 hours. He never once turned it on to the fun dance music that my mom would listen to. And as we're driving along, now, those of you who are younger, maybe young kids at the hospital, we didn't have iPads or iPhones or DVD players. How many of you have those things when you go on long car trips? What did we have then? We didn't have anything. We would play the counting cows game, or we would play the license plate game, or we'd play I Spy for 500 miles. And when we were driving down about an hour outside of Delaware, my brother Robbie, the youngest twin, was starting to get bored. And he's looking out the window and he saw a billboard that said, Pedro south of the border, 958 miles. Who here's heard of Pedro south of the border? My brother said, Dad, that's something we haven't seen. Pedro south of the border, 958 miles. What do you think it is? My dad said, I don't know, but we'll find out in 958 miles. My brother said, is that a long way? My dad said, well, we had nothing else to do, nothing else to talk about. He turned it into an hour-long math lesson. Mijo, we're traveling 60 miles an hour. It's 950. We're probably going to drive. And we tried to figure out how many hours it would be. He said, we're going to stop at a hotel tonight. We tried to figure that out. We'll sleep for 8 hours. We'll get up. We'll have breakfast. We'll drive and drive, have lunch and drive, and we'll be at Pedro south of the border, whatever that is. My brother said, okay, Dad. We drove a little bit longer, listening to smooth jazz music. And about 15 minutes later, Pedro south of the border, 915 miles. My brother goes, Dad, what do you think it is? My dad said, I don't know, but we'll find out in 915 miles. My brother asked the same question. Is that a long way? My dad spent another. Well, mijo, you know, we're traveling 60 miles an hour minus the 30 miles we just traveled. We're going to stop. And it goes on every 15 or 20 miles. And every time we see another sign, my brother says, Dad, what do you think it is? I don't know, mijo. Maybe it's an amusement park with a big roller coaster. Maybe, mijo. Maybe it's a huge swimming pool with the biggest slide that we can go down. Maybe, mijo. Every 15 or 20 miles, another sign. Pedro south of the border, 800 miles. Pedro south of the border, 750 miles. And my dad is gripping that wheel, and I can tell he doesn't want to hear about it anymore. But he knows we've already seen that sign 17 times. It's coming for another 700 miles. We stopped that night at a hotel. Now, there are 3 boys, and my dad got one bed, and the 3 of us shared the other bed. Who of you has shared a bed on a road trip with somebody? When we were younger, it was okay. The 3 of us all fit, but we were getting older and older and older. And my brother Henry was in the middle, Robbie was on the right, I was on the left. And all of a sudden, Robbie starts yelling, hey, stop punching. My brother Henry wakes up. I didn't do that. Yeah, you just punched me. My dad said, everybody be quiet. No more talking, okay? Then my brother punches me and kicks me, and the next thing you know, Robbie and I are in the bed with my dad, and Henry's sleeping like a starfish all by himself. It was his plan all along. We get up the next morning and we eat breakfast, and Robert is beside himself with excitement. Today's the day. We're going to see Pedro south of the border. My dad said yes. And it's got to be every 15 miles another sign until my dad is trying not to scream, but it's too much. And then finally, we get south of Georgia. We cross the border between Georgia and Florida. And there's a sign that says, you made it. Pedro south of the border, 2 miles. Kids, start screaming. Your parents will stop the car. You can Google that sign. That sign exists. I don't know if it's still there, but it's on Google. And my brother now, he can't believe it. We finally pull off. We turn off of the road, and we pull up to Pedro south of the border. And there's a guy at a table with tacos and a sign around his neck that says, I'm Pedro. My brother Robert goes, Pedro south of the border? Is it taco stand? My dad said, yes, and I'm hungry. It's lunchtime. I love tacos. Henry says, I love tacos. I said, I love tacos. My brother Robert says, I love tacos, but I really hate Pedro. We buy those tacos, and Robert's just crying. He can't console himself. We eat those tacos, and we're driving down 95 South into Florida. My brother's just inconsolable. And then we look out and we see a sign, Disney World, 50 miles. My brother goes, it better be better than Pedro's south of the border. We get to Disney World. My dad had never been to Disney World. Of course, we knew what Disney World was. It was part of the trip. We get to Disney World, and we're running around that place, and it was better than Pedro's south of the border, and we discovered Space Mountain. Who's ever gone on Space Mountain? Space Mountain is a roller coaster. We got on the roller coaster. My dad in the front, me next to him, my two brothers behind. My dad had never been on a roller coaster. They didn't exist in Cuba, or if they did, he didn't go. And so we're on that roller coaster. It goes into a tunnel. It goes around all these things. And my brothers and I, yay! And we hear somebody screaming. It's my dad next to me. He's screaming. And it stops at the end. And he goes, gracias a Dios que ya se acabó este. He's just so happy that it's over. When it goes backwards. Do you know this? The thing goes and does the whole thing backwards. He's screaming again. We get off of that roller coaster. My dad says, we are leaving Disneyland right now. We get into the car and we drive another, what felt like 17 hours to Miami, Florida, where we got to my grandmother's house in Little Havana in Miami. She had food ready for us, a huge table full of frijoles negros, arroz, ropa vieja, con gris, plátanos, tostones, all of that food. And the rule is that when you eat with Cubans, you have to eat everything that's on your plate and ask for a second helping and eat everything that's there as well. If you don't, you're insulting the cook. The first plate is so big, your stomach is so full. My abuela would say, ¿Te gustó? Did you like the food? Abuela, it was delicious. Oh, then have another helping. Oh, no, I'm too full. Then you didn't like my food. I've been cooking all the day. Oh, no, abuela, I'll try to eat it. You try to eat that second helping, and now you're just so full. The only thing you can do is plop on the couch. My grandmother's beautiful white leather couch covered with a half-inch thick clear plastic. That when you sit down, you just stick to it. You have to peel yourself off. I'd say, abuela, why do you have this clear plastic ruining this beautiful couch? She said, I don't want your stinking body on it, you know? So we're sitting there and we're listening and my grandmother's just there. And I look at her, I say, abuela, ¿cuántos años tienes? How old are you? She said, ay, mijito, nunca pregunta una mujer cubana cuántos años tiene. Never ask a Cuban lady how old she is. Okay. Pero abuela, how old are you? Ay, mijito, I am 18 years old. Abuela, you can't be 18. My dad is like 35. You can't be younger than my dad. How is that possible? Ay, mijito, es un milagro. It's a miracle. It's still too hot to go outside. We're still too full to go anywhere. We talk about other things. How was the trip? My brother talking about Pedro south of the border. My dad talking about the roller coaster. Me again, abuela, ¿cuántos años tiene? How old are you? Ay, mijito, nunca pregunta. Never, no, but I want to know, abuela. I want to know. Bueno, mijito, I'm 33 years old. Abuela, how's that possible? My dad is that same age. You can't be the same age as my dad. She said, es un milagro. It's a miracle. This kept going on and on until finally I said, abuela, really, tell me, how old are you? She said, ay, mijito, te voy a decir. La verdad es que yo sí soy vieja. It's true that I am old. I am so old que yo tengo una pie en la tumba y otro en cascarón de plátano. I'm so old, I've got one foot in the grave and another on a banana peel. She said, I can slip on that peel and die any minute. You never know. You should make sure you... I could see her chest breathing, but her face was completely still. Abuela, her chest is moving. Her face not moving at all. Abuela, no bromas. Don't fool around. That's not funny. Abuela, ¿te moriste? Did you just die? Sí. Then how are you talking? Es un milagro. It's a miracle. And we would laugh. And then she would say, ya es tiempo. It's cool enough to go outside now. The sun is not as hot. She would turn on telenovelas. You know what telenovelas are? Soap operas. She would start the soap operas, and my brothers and I would go out and we would play. We would come back, and my dad said, tomorrow, tu tío Martel, he's going to take us all on a boat. We had never been on a boat. The next morning, Tío Martel picks us up. We go to Miami Beach. We get on this old boat, and all of us are out on that water. It's this beautiful water. We're out far, far from the ocean. We can the shore. We can barely see the shore. And Martel shuts off the boat. He said, who wants to go swimming? And we all jumped off of that boat and started swimming. And then my brothers got back on the boat. I wanted to stay out. My brother Henry looked down. He said, wow, what are those? And Martel said, medusas. I said, ¿Qué cosas son medusas? What are medusas? And he said, you're going to find out in about a second. Medusas are jellyfish. And all of a sudden, it felt like something was burning me from underneath the water, which was confusing because it was water, and how can something burn under the water? And all of a sudden, Martel and my dad's strong hands pulled me up, threw me on the boat. I had these little welts on my body. My brothers were sad. Martel took out some meat tenderizer. Do you know this? And just dumped it all over my body. It's covered in that meat tenderizer, but it helped. And we got back to my grandmother's house. She screamed at Martel. She screamed at my dad. She said, oye, mijito, ¿tú estás bien? I said, yo pienso que tengo una pato en la tumba y otro en cascarón de plátano. I said, I feel like I got one foot in the grave and another on a banana peel. She started laughing, and then she took us all out of our clothes, and my brother looked at Robbie and said, wow, it looks like you still have your bathing suit on. And it looks like you've got your bathing suit on. And it looks like I've got my bathing suit on. Abuela, how is it possible that it looks like we have our bathing suits on? And her eyes got big, and she started screaming at Martel and my dad. Now, I think it existed, but if it did, they didn't use it. They didn't put sunscreen on us at all. So our bodies were completely red, except for the white around where our bathing suits were. And my grandmother put us in the bed, and she got out a gallon of vinegar and started pouring it all over us. The vinegar smelled terrible, but it cooled off of our skin. Then she took vapor rub and spread it on our chests. And then she wrapped our feet in newspaper. I asked what that was for. She said, I don't know, but some of this is going to distract you from the sunburn that you're going to have. How many of you have family members that have weird solutions for your ailments that you have? So my grandmother, the next day, our skin was starting to peel, that horrible sunburn peel that it was, and we had to stay in the house again. And then all of the cousins would start to come in. And Cousin Ray would come in, and we'd sit down around the table, and we would start to eat again. That's what we do at noon when it's so hot. And then after eating, my grandmother would say, oye, tengo unos chistes para ti. I've got jokes for you. And she would start to tell things about my father when he was younger. And then she told a little joke. That was the first story I ever told in Chicago. She said, había una vez una familia de ratones. There once was a family of mice. There was mamá ratón, papá ratón, hermano y hermana ratón. Mama, papa, brother, and sister mouse all went on a picnic. When they were done eating, the brother and sister said, Mamá, Papa, vamos a jugar. Let's go play. Mama Mouse and Papa Mouse said, you guys go play. We're going to stay here and smooch. And the brother and sister said, ew. And they ran across the field. They got to his fence. And on the other side of the fence was an animal they'd never seen up close before. Big green eyes, long whiskers. The brother said, es un gato. The sister said, hola gato. The cat's claws dug into the ground. The brother said, hola gato. The cat's whiskers started to twitch, and soon that cat jumped on top of that fence. Those two mice said, adios gato. They turned around. They ran as fast as they could. They got back to their parents. They said, Mama, Papa, that cat is chasing us. We better go. Papa turned around. He didn't see that cat. He said, yo no tengo miedo del gato. I'm not scared of that cat. Yo soy Papa Ratón. He said, if that cat comes, I'm going to say que yo soy Papa. And just then, he saw that cat. He said, Mama. He went jumping behind Mama. Brother and sister went behind Mama. The only thing that stood between that mean cat and her family was Mamá Ratón. She was scared. But with the courage a mother feels when her family is threatened, she stood on her hind paws, looked right into the green eyes of that cat, and she began to bark like a dog. And the cat stopped. The cat thought, this is weird. A barking mouse. Ah, no vale la pena. And the cat ran away. Mama couldn't believe it worked. Brother said, wow. Sister said, cool. Papa said, I knew I married the right woman. And when they got home nice and safe, Mama said to her children what my grandmother told me, and I want to tell all of you. She said, you see, kids, it pays to speak another language. And that's the story of the barking mouse from my grandmother to you. I teach writing to 4, 5, and 6-year-olds, and all I tell them is if you know somebody and you've been someplace, you can write a story. How many of you know somebody? How many of you know 2 bodies? How many of you have been someplace? How many of you have been 2 places? Well, I teach the 4-year-olds just to draw a picture of whatever they can think. I can draw better than this. You probably can't see it. It's just a family in a car. And I just write one little sentence, Pedro's south of the border. This is what my picture books look like before they're picture books. It's just people in a place. And then if I can figure out a problem to give them, is there a problem in Barbara McBride's story? Yes, she doesn't want her dad to come. Is there a problem in Pedro's south of the border? It's a small problem. And I just start to write these little things. And then what I do, when I'm brave enough, I give them to my wife to read. She's a high school English teacher. Here's, ¿Te moriste, abuela? Did you die? There's my grandmother on the couch. And if my wife says it's okay, I send it to my agent. And my literary agent, she makes me write it again. And then, when it's ready, she sends it out to hopefully be considered by publishers. So Pedro south of the border is being rejected by publishers as we speak. Awesome. My son loves to draw pictures, and I tell him that's wonderful that you love to draw. I wish that I could draw, because now that would be something wonderful to be able to do as a children's book writer, to be able to illustrate it as well. So he draws. That's what he likes to do. He loves to read. He loves to be read to. He loves to draw. And he loves to fight with his little sister. How many of you love to fight with your little sister, your little brother? How many of you have a brother or sister that loves to fight with you? How many of you sometimes start it, and sometimes they start it, and sometimes you both start it? All right, kids back there, that's right. So most of the time they're fighting, sometimes they're not, and my son is drawing. And one day, they were in their room together. They share a room, just like I share a room with my brothers when I was younger. They were in the room together, and my son is talking to his little sister, my daughter. He's saying, you know, Nina, when I get older, I think I'm going to be an illustrator. And she says, oh, that's really great. What's that? He says, well, you draw. You get to draw in color, and then you get to get paid for it. It's really amazing. If I keep practicing drawing, maybe I'll be an illustrator. She said, oh, that's great. He says, you know what? Maybe when I get older, I can illustrate Daddy's books. She said, oh, that's great. He says, yeah, maybe I could be the illustrator of the books he writes, you know, if he's still alive. My daughter said, yeah, if he's still alive. So my son sees me when we're sitting down to eat. If I go to eat something that's not so healthy, he says, Dad, I really want you to eat the broccoli so when you get older, you can still be alive so that I can illustrate your books. I said, honey, the real money is in the writing and the illustrating. You should write your own books. He says, okay. And my son, when he was riding his bicycle, a little tiny about my son, he was about 3 years old, looking out in front of the house, seeing the older boys and girls on our street in Los Angeles riding their bikes back and forth. And he said, Daddy, yo quiero montar una bicicleta. I speak to my son in Spanish. I want him to speak with his grandfather, my dad, who's still alive and doing very, very well in Spanish. And my son says, Papá, yo quiero montar una bicicleta. I say, mijito, tú solo tienes 3 años. No puedes montar una bicicleta. You're only 3 years old. You can't ride a bicycle. And he says, Mom. Andrea comes out. I want to ride a bike. She said, okay. She went, and online, she loves online shopping, she found a balance bike. Who knows what a balance bike is? This didn't exist when I was younger. How many of you learned to ride a bicycle with training wheels? So for me, it was my dad took one training wheel off, and I learned to lean, and then he took the other training wheel off. He held onto the back, promised he wouldn't let go, then he let go. How many of you have that story, right? So I was thinking that when he was 4 or 5, I think I was about 5 when I got a bike with training wheels, I would get a bike with training wheels for my son. My wife said, no, there's a thing called a balance bike. It's just 2 wheels, a seat, and a handlebar. And a few days later, to our house came a little balance bike. It came out of the box. It was ready. It was already put together. My son sat on it, and he started walking along the carpet in our living room, and just walking and walking and walking. He said, "See, Dad, I'm riding my bike." And walking, walking. Then he figured out that he could push off with one foot, push off with another, and sort of roll along the carpet. And he was starting to ride, quotes, back and forth along the carpet. Then he said, "Dad, I want to ride outside. Quiero montar mi bici afuera." And I said, "You need to put on a helmet." Put on his helmet. We got in front of our house. It's not even that much longer than the stage, actually. I live in Los Angeles. And he was going back and forth, kind of waddling, every now and then pushing off with one foot or another, kind of. And 3 days later, he's actually balancing on two wheels, riding about 10 feet at a time, back and forth. And then he said, "Dad, I want to go down the street." We went down the street. He said, "Dad, I want to go up the hill." Small hill. We go up the hill. On the other side, there's a little incline going down. He says, "Dad, I want to go down the big hill." "Honey, I don't think you're ready." "Mom," she said, "you can do it. You got your helmet on." He went down that hill, lifted up his feet in the air, held on, and at 3 years old and 2 months, was riding on two wheels down the hill. Then he walked back up the hill and down again and up again and down again. And then that was what he was doing. It felt and looked like he was actually riding. There was no pedals, of course. He knew how to pedal on a tricycle. And then beyond that hill was an even bigger hill. He said, "Dad, yo quiero bajar la montaña. I want to go down the mountain." "Honey, you can't do that." "Mom, you can do it. Be brave." I learned be brave from my wife, actually. "You can do it. Be brave," she said. He got there, and he pushed off, lifted up his feet, and went down. Not very fast, but he was 3, and at the bottom of that mountain was a little tiny crack at the bottom of the sidewalk, just big enough for that wheel to fit in, and that bike went over hard. Helmet hit the ground. He was okay. He scraped his chin against the ground and just started crying. I ran down as fast as I could, and tears are coming into my eyes. I said, "Honey, are you okay?" He said, "I fell." I said, "I know. You okay?" "My chin." I said, "I know, honey. I can see your chin. It's bleeding." He stopped crying and said, "Blood? Want to see the blood?" I said, "You want to see the blood?" "Yeah." I got a little mirror off the side of a car. He said, "Cool." He said, "Want to show the neighbors." We went up the street and knocked on the kids across the street. He said, "Look, blood." They said, "Cool." He said, "I want to show Mommy." We go inside, open the door, and Mommy sees the blood, and she starts crying. We go to clean it up. He said, "No, leave the blood. Leave the blood." Okay. We left his chin bleeding. It stopped bleeding. It scabbed over. He said, "Want to see the blood again?" Would pick the scab. "No, you can't do it." Put on the Band-Aid at night. He woke up. It was fine. You know how 3-year-olds, they heal like that. And the next day, he was riding his bike again, and he fell. And he didn't bleed, and he started crying, "Want to see the blood?" And over the next 6 months, whenever he was playing, times that the kids, 3-year-olds, fall all the time, if he fell and he bled, he would laugh. And if he fell and didn't bleed, he would cry. So whenever he fell, I kind of hoped that he would bleed. Does that make me a bad dad? I don't know. Well, my son then, after about, when he was 4, got on that bike and started riding, and then Nina got on her bike just about 2 months ago, or 2 weeks ago, I guess, and I was holding on, and I could not let go of that girl. I could not let go of that girl. And she looked up at me, and she said, "Daddy, let go." And it's hard to let go as a parent. And I let go, and she went off. And she didn't fall, and both of my children love to ride bikes to this day. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you very much.